Hello! So today I just wanted to talk about some of actually all of the AP exams that I took this past year. Today's July 7th, and since I live in Texas, I can't see my AP scores until July 9th. So I thought I would make this video kind of like in preparation for that. In previous years, I've made videos talking about like other AP exams that I've taken, but it was always after I had like saw my score. So like I felt like my opinion of the test was kind of like biased. Oh yeah, this test was really hard, but it wasn't that hard because I got the score on it. So I figured that it would be good to kind of give my perspective on the exams that I took before I look at my scores, so that it will be my completely unbiased opinion just based on like taking the test. So I'll like try to make like a kind of live video reacting to my scores because I've seen people do that and it's always really interesting. So I'll try to do that if my curiosity doesn't get the best of me. So like I said earlier, I took 6 AP exams this year. They were Calculus AB, English Literature and Composition, Physics 1, European History, United States Government and Politics, and Macroeconomics. Okay, so the first test is Calculus AB. It was the very first test I took, so I was like bright-eyed and idealistic, and I was also happy because I knew that that was probably going to be like the most difficult test for me, so I was happy to just get it over with. So the test itself, obviously like all AP exams, there's a multiple choice section and the free response question section. The multiple choice section is 45 questions and it's an hour and 45 minutes. And this test is kind of like confusing in the breakdown because there's sections where you're allowed to use a calculator and there's sections where you're not allowed to use a calculator. So on the multiple choice section, 28 questions are non-calculator, no calculator allowed, and you get 55 minutes for that. And then after that, there are 17 questions that you get 50 minutes for that you're allowed to use a calculator for. So the non-calculator section, multiple choice part was pretty difficult for me, not gonna lie. But I mean, it's supposed to be difficult, so that's not really surprising. The calculator section was a lot easier, but the calculator's only helpful if you actually know how to use the calculator, because like I was talking to some of my friends and they're not exactly like proficient in calculator usage, and so they were like, oh yeah, the calculator section of the AP exam was really difficult, blah blah blah, and I was like, really? That was like the easiest part. They're like, oh well, I didn't know how to use the calculator. So I would definitely say that like if you're going to be taking this exam, to kind of like try to like brush up on your calculator skills before you do that. But overall, the multiple choice, it was pretty challenging, but it was doable. Like it wasn't impossible. Like if you knew anything about like basic calculus, you could get through at least some of it. So that's helpful. And then of course there was the free response section. It was 6 questions that you get an hour and a half for. So at first there are 2 questions that you get 30 minutes for, and you are allowed to use your graphing calculator for that. And then after those 30 minutes are up, you can go on to the next 4 questions that you're not allowed to use the calculator for. However, if you like have time and you didn't finish the first 2 questions, you can go back to the first 2 questions, but you can't use the calculator. So the free response, the parts that I knew how to do on the free response were like really easy, really cut and dry. But as with every AP exam, there's always that like 1 or 2 things that your teacher doesn't get to or doesn't spend enough time on, and so you're sitting there kind of lost. And that was the case with the free response for me. But the calculator questions were pretty easy, and some of the non-calculator questions were pretty easy. So like I think that like I stood like a pretty good chance of passing the exam just based on like what I thought. Either that or I got everything wrong and I completely failed. But we'll find out in a couple of days. Alright, so that's it for AP Calculus. The next test I took was AP English Literature and Composition. That's like, if I remember correctly, that would be the equivalent of like second semester freshman year English in college. And I got a 4 on English language and composition. So I already have some English credit. So it would be nice if I could get this English credit as well. So English Lit and Comp, multiple choice and free response, of course. The multiple choice section you get 60 minutes for, and it says 55 questions, and the multiple choice is 45% of the score. So this test definitely is weighted a little more heavily on like the writing side. The multiple choice section, and I hope I'm not like eating my words a couple of days from now when I check my scores, but the multiple choice section was like ridiculously easy. Like the passages for the most part were, I mean, they weren't like straightforward. There were like, you did have to like think deeply. Hopefully I'm not wrong, but I think I did extremely well on the multiple choice. So the free response sections, you get 120 minutes, that's 2 hours, to answer 3 questions, and it's 55% of your exam score. And so there's 3 different essays. You have to do a literary analysis of a poem, a literary analysis of a given passage of prose fiction, and an analysis that examines a specific concept, issue, or element in a work of literary merit selected by the student. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the literary analysis essays first. The poem that they gave us, I don't remember what it was about, but I remember reading it and being like, yes, I understand this. I think that I can actually like write a relatively decent essay on this. So I was pretty happy about that. The prose piece, however, that was another story altogether. Like, I swear I had to read that thing like maybe 3 or 4 times before I was able to like pull together something that kind of in a roundabout way addressed the questions. So if I don't pass the AP exam, that essay is the reason why, because it was pretty bad. And I know I'm not the only one. I was talking to some of my friends about it, and they were like, so passage 2, and I was like, let's not talk about it. They give you like a topic, like this year's topic was like a novel where cruelty is a central theme or something to that effect. And basically what you do is that you pick a book or a play of literary merit and you write about how that book goes with that topic. They give you like a list of sample books to choose from, but you don't necessarily have to pick a book off of that list. It's just to get you thinking about like the quality of writing that they want the book to have. And basically a good rule of thumb is that like if you've studied that book at any point in high school English, it probably has literary merit and you could probably write about it on the AP exam. Like what I did for preparation of the AP exam, because I knew that this type of question was going to be on there, is that I watched like a bunch of like videos that summarize the plots of novels that I had read throughout high school, because like I can generally remember like an overarching theme and the overarching plot of a novel, but for these essays they actually want you to like talk about the characters and stuff. So you can't just be like, oh, that one guy that did that one thing. Like they want actually details. But at the same time, they don't want you to just like summarize. They want you to show the thought and like tie it back to like whatever question it was asking. So, like I said earlier, this year's theme was cruelty. And so the book I ended up writing about was Wuthering Heights, because if you've ever read that, you know that it's just cruelty on cruelty on cruelty. Like all the characters in that book get a pretty raw deal. So like I thought that that would be a really good book to write about. And I think that I did okay on that essay. So that's that. I took the English one in the morning and then I took the physics one in the afternoon. So AP Physics 1, this was a new exam. The Physics 1s and the Physics 2 exams, these were the first years that they were introduced. And so everybody who took them, I guess, was kind of College Board's guinea pigs. Okay. Let me just say this before I get into like the details of the exam. I'm going to college this fall, and I'm going to be an engineering major. And I wouldn't have picked that field if I didn't think that I was relatively decent at like math and science, which includes physics. That being said, I was completely lost on this test. I don't think that any amount of studying or review could have prepared me for the travesty that was that exam. So, the multiple choice section, You get an hour and a half for it, and it's 50 questions. So 45 of those questions are just basic multiple choice questions, but the last 5 of the questions, they were called multiple correct items. And that's where you had to choose 2 answers. 2 of the answers were correct. So it was like A and B or A and C, blah, 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 like that. And the thing is that since it's multiple choice, you can't get partial credit for it. It's not like, oh, you got like one of the options right, so we'll give you like half a point. No, it's like all or nothing. So those, I don't know why those were on there. Ask College Board. I mean, they weren't that difficult. I think maybe I got like 4 out of 5 of those right. But the multiple choice section just, in general, it sucked. I mean, the whole exam sucked, but the multiple choice section sucked. Like, I've never felt so helpless in my life. So I'm sure that when College Board sees how bad everybody did on this exam, they'll kind of revise it a little bit because it is the first year. So your response, you also got an hour and a half for that one, and it was 5 questions. So one of the questions was an experimental design question where you actually had to design an experiment. Okay, I need to pause on this one because So we practiced doing those kind of questions in my class. So like I knew what to expect and everything. But the thing is that the experimental design question was over electricity. And I don't know how, like, what order physics topics are supposed to be discussed in and how much emphasis is supposed to be given to each topic, but electricity was literally the very last thing we learned before the exam. And we didn't spend that much time on it. Like, I mean, if there was a free response question on it, and granted, the experimental design question was weighted more than some of the other free response questions on the test. So it was like a double whammy. And I don't even think that I answered it. Like, I think I tried to, but I was literally just making stuff up. Like, whoever read my stuff is gonna think I'm so stupid, because, oh god, that was horrible. So yeah, I was pretty upset that it was about electricity, given that we didn't spend that much time on electricity in our class, but whatever. I probably failed that one. So, and then, okay, let me go back. Okay, so also on the free response, there was one quantitative/qualitative translation question. I forgot to mention on both parts of the AP Physics exam, they actually give you a formula chart. It was helpful, I suppose, but the thing is that like it used different symbols than the ones that we were used to using in class. So like it would give you like a key, like it'd be like, okay, little a equals acceleration, capital A equals amplitude, blah blah blah. So like you knew what everything meant, but I feel like it was really time consuming to have to like look at the key and then look at the formula, and yeah, that was great, but it's over now. And then the other 3 questions were 3 short answer questions, one requiring a paragraph length argument, aka probably the only questions that I got right. I find that looking at the free response questions are like a good way to study for these tests because they're so ridiculously difficult. Alright, so the next exam that I took was AP European History, and I'm not going to like go through like the structure of this exam because when I was looking it up to do this video, they're actually planning on changing it for next year. And so it wouldn't be helpful to you if you're watching this in like 2016 or 2017 or whatever, if I was talking about 2015's exam and you got all confused on like the structure or whatever. So I'm not going to get too specific with that, but there's obviously a multiple choice section and a free response question section. I think there were like 80 questions on the multiple choice, but I don't remember how much time they gave for it. And then the free response, there was a DBQ and 2 other essays. So, the thing with the other 2 essays that weren't the DBQ is that you could like, they were essays B and C. Essay B, there were 3 different prompts you could choose from. You wrote one. SAC, there were 3 different prompts you could choose from. You wrote one. So it kind of gave you like some flexibility. Like if you didn't know one topic, you could write about this one. My problem is that I didn't know anything. Okay, so there's a reason behind it. European history was like the class that like I wasn't too crazy about. I just took it so that I could have like an AP class to take. I didn't want to take like an off period or like an on level class because I wanted my GPA to go up so I could go up in class rank. So I decided to take AP European history and I absolutely hated it. Like my GPA did go up, but it should have gone down because I didn't put like any effort into that class at all. Like sometimes I just flat out wouldn't turn things in. I never really studied. We never really like practiced anything for the exam, but like if I fail the AP European History exam, if I check my scores 2 days from now and I see that I got a 1 or a 2, I accept full responsibility for it. It's not College Board's fault. It's not my teacher's fault. It's my fault. Because I feel like if I had actually been more familiar with the material, I could have done well on that exam. Because, I mean, I got a 4 on United States history and a 5 on world history. So, like, I know that I'm capable of passing AP history exams, but I just didn't put the effort into this one. But the multiple choice, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. I actually like knew things, and my DBQ is good as well, but those other 2 essays. The next exam that I took was United States Government and Politics, known affectionately as AP Gov. So this exam and the macroeconomics exam that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, they're like shorter than other AP exams I've taken. Like most AP exams are like 3 hours or 3.5 hours or 3 hours and 15 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark. But the AP Gov exam was 2 hours and 25 minutes. It was pleasantly short. And I was really happy because that was the 5th AP exam I had taken and I was just so done. Like AP exams fry your brain. So the multiple choice section has 60 questions and you get 45 minutes for it, and it's 50% of your score. So I consider my strength to be multiple choice questions, but I actually have to say that for the AP Gov exam, I actually thought that the free response questions were a little easier than the multiple choice questions. That's not to say that the multiple choice questions were difficult, but yeah, there was some stuff on there I didn't know, so it's whatever. And then the free response questions, there's 4 questions, and you get 100 minutes for them, and that's also half of your score. Like I said earlier, the free response questions, I actually studied for AP Gov, so I was actually able to, like, there were some questions on there that, like, I knew that if I hadn't studied, aka crammed the night before, if I hadn't studied, I wouldn't have been able to answer the questions. But then at the same time, some of the questions were, like, common sense. Like, if you've been paying attention to the news, make sure that you look at, like, Supreme Court cases, because there were quite a few on there. Like, landmark cases. You don't have to look through, like, every single Supreme Court case, but things that, like, people know, like, Miranda v. Arizona, Roe v. Wade, stuff like that. And the last exam that I took was AP Macroeconomics. And like I said earlier, like the government exam, this one was short. This one was 2 hours and 10 minutes. All right, disclaimer about macroeconomics. So I don't know how it works at other schools, but at my school, to like graduate, you have to have 1 semester of government and 1 semester of economics, and that includes if you're taking AP. And so I had economics the first semester and government the second semester. And so the last time I had looked at anything like in class that was economics related was December, and the exam was in mid-May. So you can see why I had a few issues. Because all of my friends that had economics the second semester, you know, when the material was like still fresh, they were like, oh yeah, that was pretty easy. That's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I was kind of just like, no words. So I definitely feel like if I had had economics the second semester and government the first semester, I could have done well on both tests instead of just doing well on one. But I mean, the scores don't lie, so I'll let you know about that in a couple of days. So, the exam, the way it's structured, the multiple choice section is 60 questions, and you get 70 minutes for it. And then the free response section is an hour long, and there's one long essay and 2 short essay questions with a mandatory 10-minute reading period. So, yeah, the multiple choice I was able to kind of reason through, but the free response, I literally just completely left one of them blank. Because, it was one of those ones where it was like part A, B, C, and D, and it was like, okay, part A, blah, blah, blah. And then part B was like, okay, based on your reasoning in part A, and then part C was like, based on your reasoning in part B, and I was like, but I didn't even do part A. So, like, it's really bad, but I just ended up leaving one of them blank. But the other 2 free response questions, I was kind of able to get through. So multiple choice section is worth 2/3, and the free response section is worth 1/3 of the final exam grade. And so I definitely feel more confident about the multiple choice than I do on the free response. So hopefully I did well enough to where I passed the exam. So yeah. So that was my thought on the 6 AP exams that I took in 2015.